My Hero Academia is a 2016 anime based off the best-selling manga. A superhero admiring boy enrolls in a prestigious hero academy and learns what it really means to be a hero after the strongest superhero, All Might, grants him his own powers. Now I remember watching this first season on Toonami or Adult Swim a few years ago. I was dog sitting at the time and I was trying to get some jobs going on, make some money, and one of the shows I watched late at night was My Hero Academia. And that first season I very much enjoyed at the time. I had a really fun time with it. Rewatching it now, or just a while ago, I have to say this first season still holds up pretty well. I haven't finished the whole show. I only watched a few seasons and then I stopped because, as I think I said before, I stopped watching anime for a while. So now I'm trying to catch up on everything that I haven't watched, haven't finished, and My Hero Academia is one of the ones I haven't finished. So how is this first season for me? How does it hold up? I think it holds up pretty well. I think it is a really fun season. I think it introduced the characters of Shota, Bakugo, Uraraka, and Deku, Midoriya, and All Might. All these characters were introduced very well in this show. Shota, he doesn't get as much interesting stuff going on in this season as opposed to season 2, which we'll talk about another time, but here he is definitely an interesting character and a fun one, but he's not as well developed in this season as Bakugo, Uraraka, All Might, or Midoriya. And I think the show does a really good job at having us endear or dislike some of these characters very well, especially Deku Midoriya. He is a very likable character. I love his arc in this show and how far he's willing to go to achieve his dreams. It is something that any kid his age could very much relate to, and I really liked how the show was able to portray that in very inspiring ways. Maybe a little bit too much. Every single inspiring word or thing, something that happens around Midoriya, just ignites a spark in him and makes him go into an inner monologue about that thing, and it's just like, it's a whole thing with this show that I know it does. Like how Dragon Ball Z has a whole lot of screaming, this has a lot of inspirational inner monologues. Whenever someone says something inspiring, at least one word, it gets to the point where it becomes a little bit comedic, but I think that is unintentional at times and kind of is a detriment. So maybe if they cut back on it, that kind of stuff a little bit, it would not feel as like jokey. But all in all, it's not like a huge problem, especially in this season. So far, I have to wait and see till I watch the other seasons I haven't watched yet. But it gets a little bit too much and a little bit ridiculous at times here. As for All Might, he is another fun character. He's played by Chris Sabat, who I probably told you in my second channel that I got the pleasure to meet. Yes, I met Vegeta, Yamcha, half the cast in Dragon Ball, in All Might. Like, he is a great voice actor, and he does a really good job here in the English dub, which I watched, and he gives this character so much Superman energy to the point where it's literally ridiculous. He's like the most typical, when you think of a superhero, like a classic one with a cape and blue spandex, he is what you think of that, and a mighty loud voice. He portrays that so well here. But what makes All Might a very interesting character is that he doesn't stay as his strong self for very long. In the first season, we find out in the first episode that he cannot hold this form any longer than he used to. For like 3 hours maybe, and sometimes even shorter depending on how much he uses that power. because something happened to him. He got very hurt in a battle one time. It caused his stomach to be taken out of him, and now he could only use his power for a very limited amount of time. And it was at this point where he starts to doubt himself a little bit, to where even in some battles he may not think he has it in him. Not until Midoriya comes in rushing into one battle scene to save Bakugo, who we'll talk about later, and that inspires him to forget about all those problems and get in there, get in the fight, and put all he got on the line just to save Bakugo and Deku. And I think with that is what made his character even more interesting and even more likable. Knowing that this kid with no quirk was the one that inspired him to keep pushing through. It then eventually led to one of my favorite segments of the show, the relationship between Midoriya and All Might. It's like a father and son relationship that Deku never had, or at least hasn't gotten for a long time, and I loved it. I love their relationship, their dialogue with each other, and it is just so wholesome, a lot of fun. The training montage that is very influenced by Rocky, I believe, is just awesome. I really love what they did with these characters. And speaking of Dragon Ball Z, the characters of Deku and Bakugo, you cannot tell me they're not giving off Vegeta and Goku vibes, with Deku being the wholesome character and Bakugo being the stubborn, full of himself one that wants to beat Deku and goes on long monologues saying that he's going to beat Deku like he hasn't before. It's just that now Deku's gotten stronger, and now his pride is very much tainted because of that, because he made fun of him as a kid a whole lot. But there's more to it than that. They start off not friends really. Deku wanted to be friends, he was more like his follower, but when Deku tries to just be a nice person, he takes that as an insult. As a kid, he thinks that in order to be a hero, you need to be the strongest and need to be the best. But he's too selfish and full of himself that he cannot see that he needs the help of others. And he doesn't take pleasure in asking for other people's help. He'd rather do it himself. He'd rather die for that. And how that's going to be explored even further in further seasons, I'm not sure. I haven't completed the whole show. I watched some of the movies, but they were out of context. So once I finish this show and those movies will be in better context, then I'll form my opinion better on that. But as of now, these two have like Goku and Vegeta energy going on. And I think it works very well here and creates a lot of intense action training sequences that climaxed very well by the end, when all these students in the My Hero Academia had to go up against so many villains. And I think these villains also worked very well. They're scary, they're intense. As for characterization, the show's definitely going to explore them even further. And I just finished the second season not too long ago, and they have, and I'll get to that when I get the chance. But in this first season, it's mostly about Deku and Bakugo and Uraraka, who is basically the love interest Deku here. And I love how they portray it. Definitely accurate to how high school would find his first crush here. And I really like how they portrayed that. Their growing friendship and respect for one another. How he also inspired Uraraka in many ways too, as to how far he pushes himself with his new quirk abilities from All Might. Like, there's a lot of great stuff here. The characterization in this first season was very good. Not like top tier, but definitely had me interested in them to watch them for another season to see where the show will take these characters. Now, as for the animation and action, this is a beautiful looking show. It is a bit stiff at times here, and I think that's just like maybe first season syndrome where they're still trying to find their footing, but the action is exhilarating. It is fast paced. The editing is not janky at all. I love all the shots that they have here. How this show utilizes all these characters' powers. There's this one girl who's able to make any sort of matter out of her own body. There's this invisible girl. There's this guy who literally shoots a laser out of his dick and just flies around like that. This guy shoots electricity, and when he does it too much, he becomes a dumbass. And the characters of Shota and Bakugo have very interesting power sets. Bakugo is flame related, while Shota is both flame and ice related. He mostly uses ice, and that will be explored later in the next season. And how he utilizes his power sets here, I think was very cool. Creates a lot of interesting fight sequences, especially in the final act. The final act is like a whole brawling match, like a free-for-all. And I really like how they portray that. Having our kids go through that ringer and face actual villains off the bat raises the stakes even higher. It creates a lot of tension for the next few seasons and what's going to happen later on. And I really like that way of storytelling. Now, as I said before, in terms of problems, the amount of speeches it gives is overwhelming. Like, I felt like they could have cut down on some of that, but I feel like it's just going to be a thing for this show. So I'm just going to have to pull through that. The season is short. It definitely is like one story arc, and it becomes predictable if you know how these kinds of stories go. But the characters are very likable, the story is interesting enough, the villains are threatening enough, the humor is really good, though a bit standard at times because I did see a lot of anime as a kid, and I know some of these tropes, and this show is not like above that. It does some of those same stuff, but it does have a good amount of humor that did make me chuckle and laugh from time to time. So I wouldn't say it's an unfunny show, but it's humor that if you've seen any anime before this, then I think you know what you're gonna get. But overall, this was a really fun season. Definitely is trying to find its footing here, but off the bat, it started off very well in this first season. I really like the characters. The music is great and inspiring. The characters, as I said, were well written. Action was great. It was intense. I love the choreography and the fight sequences. Like, this is just a really fun first season, and I'm very excited to talk about season 2 when I get the chance. And for this season, I'm going to give My Hero Academia an A-. Thank you guys so much for watching. Please leave a like, subscribe, comment, and I'll see you guys next time.